All right, guys, good afternoon. It is day 4 of the lunch break series, Real Talk Working from Home. Phyllis and I have been chatting it up for 3 days so far. We're going on, I know, I'm like, what day of the week is it? This is crazy.
Yeah.
But it's been a really great conversation. We've had various people inbox us, asking us different questions. And one of the things that I have absolutely loved this time around is that I've had the opportunity of hearing from other people and their own experiences about working from home. I've even had people inbox me and ask me, how hard is it to build your consulting business? That was probably one of them. And one of the other questions that I got, which is what we're going to talk about today, is how the heck do you manage your time? Because they follow me and they see that I have 3 kids, I have a husband, I have a dog because she's like right down here. I manage clients, I speak, I teach at a college. So there's a lot of different things that I do. And I have to tell you, the only way to do this is to manage your time. So the question for today and the topic is time. Do you really control it when you work from home?
Oh, such a big, juicy topic.
Exactly.
I love this one because I don't know who coined the phrase master your time, master your life. But basically, if nobody did, I'll claim it. And the whole point is that if you can understand how time actually works and how you work and how to integrate those two things together, you will become so productive and everything will be great. But if for some reason you are disconnected with the realities of time or you're disconnected with the way that you are currently working with time, then you have this big conflict and there's a lot of frustration and there's a lot of, I don't have enough time, there's not enough time. It's like there's a lot of pushback against this thing called time, where basically it's just a mismatch of the functions of time and your personality. So there's a kind of a deep topic there, though.
Oh, yeah. Time. That in and of itself could have been like a 5-day series right
Yes.
there. Do you control time? What is time? Do you value time? How do you charge for time? Right. And when you work from home, let's be honest. I mean, I'm gonna tell you my personal opinion because this is gonna be crazy, and it's one of those things. When I first started my own business, everyone was like, "Oh, you are so lucky! This is so amazing! You're gonna now have control of your own time. You can do what you want when you want."
Now with 3 kids.
First off, my time disappeared my first kid, right? So that was, there you go, that's done. But the minute you sign a client, yes, it's nice that you can kind of maneuver your schedule, but time doesn't really belong to you because a client is paying for some of it. So my thing is, do I own my time? Not necessarily, but I do feel that I have control over my time more so when I work from home than when I worked in a 9 to 5. That's my personal opinion. And I know people can beg to differ. And here's the thing, there are even times that I have to do something all day for a client. And guess what? That full day, I don't control it. The client does. Because I am working for the client. I'm working with the client. So if I tell a client I'm going to be with you from 9 to 3, I no longer own that 9 to 3 time.
Yes. Now, that brings up an amazing point, and that is when, and I'm assuming, and we're both assuming, that if you're watching this, you either work at home or you're wanting to work at home, and this is your lunch break and you're enjoying it with us. So those of you who do work at home, there's an experience I'll talk about in a minute, but those of you who don't work at home yet and are working a job 9 to 5 and you're wondering how time will be, I will just tell you that you will have a time journey when you start working at home, because time will change for you. You will, first off, feel that freedom of, oh, I don't have to get up and get dressed and do the things. But do you really? Or all of a sudden you say, look, I can have lunch at 11 o'clock. Oh my gosh, right? So there's like this mental freedom that happens where you get to break the mold of what maybe you've been doing for 10 years, 20 years, or whatever. So that feels like freedom, right? And then what happens is when you start taking on clients, and you are obligated and you're doing things for them, your time becomes a work for hire. That time becomes their time. But your skill and your expertise and your wisdom around whatever it is that you're doing for them can be valuable to you. And so what you're doing is you're gaining a financial freedom in exchange for that time freedom. So you still have a freedom. It's just one of them's financial and one of them would be time. And then I'll say this straight up, as you go through life and you modify your business and you start creating things that don't involve your physical time as much, but give you a lot more income, then you will find that time freedom opens up again for you. So back to the business journey, right? That first thing that we talked about, that business journey, is different. Almost every year that I've worked for myself, my relationship with time has been different. And I want to say relationship because, and I mean this, is that some people fight against time. They're always in a struggle with time. I don't have enough time. What they're saying is like this big struggle, resistance. I don't have enough time. There's not enough time to do the things I want to do. And it's always rushed and all that. That is a destructive relationship with time. That will destroy you from stress. Then there are other people who have learned to work with time, in partnership with time. They have a realistic understanding of how time works. And I'll explain this and make it less esoteric. So
no, this is great. This is really great because I think that it does have to do with your relationship with time.
Yes. And so, I always do this whole thing about to use a to-do list is an unrealistic relationship with time. And the reason for that is when you make a to-do list, everything seems to take up the same amount of weight in terms of time. But when you start transferring that onto a time block on a calendar, the first thing on your list might take 20 minutes. The second thing on your list might take 2 hours, right? So looking at it as a list is a big disconnect from time. You will be frustrated at the end of the day because you did not get the list done, and you'll go, why? It's just a short list. It's only 5 things on my list. Why didn't I get them all done? Well, because it's disconnected from the realities of time. But if you put them on the calendar and adjust them, if you're in the middle of doing that thing that you thought would take 2 hours and it's taking more time, and you expand that block on your calendar, you'll see, oh, it takes me 4 freaking hours to write a blog post. Yep. How is that possible, right? So you start having a better relationship and understanding of how time actually works for you. And you do that by doing that on your calendar and expanding and contracting those time blocks as you start to put them on your calendar. And then what happens is you start saying, look, I can get 3 things done a day. And these are where those 3 things fit. And that's all I'm going to say yes to today. And after you start doing that a while, you say, well, how can I charge more money for these 3 things? Right? How can I leverage what I love to do in the space that I have for those 3 things? And so it's not time freedom, it's time partnership. That's really the theme of it. There, I've said my piece. Can we go home now?
No, we cannot, because here's the thing. I love that you said time partnership, but how many people know how to create a time partnership?
Yeah, it's a thing, right?
When I first started, oh my goodness, I did do my to-do list and I still do my to-do list. You and I talk about like my process is a little bit different than
Right.
Phyllis's. For me, I'm very, I need to write it down.
Yes.
For me, it's not a reality. Like a lot of people say, it's not a reality until you put it in your calendar. For me, my reality starts when I jot it down on the to-do list, because I know that to-do list now needs to go into my calendar. So for me, that is my process. And we each have processes, and your process evolves just as your business journey does. So I can give an example of I might have images that I need to create for a client, right? And some people, like I had an assistant, she would tell me, she would dread it. She'd be like, Daphne, please stop giving me the graphics to do, because number one, she felt like she sucked at graphics. And because she felt that she sucked at graphics, it took her forever to do a graphic, right? So something that might take me 15 minutes to do was taking her an hour to do. So that time partnership, she needed to understand it. And she also needed to know how to quote for that service,
Yes.
because a service that might take her an hour, she might want to charge a little bit more, because she wants to make sure that she's equating her time to that financial freedom that she's going for.
Yes, yes. And back to the example about me realizing it takes me 4 hours to write a blog post. When you track that and you say, okay, well, I've spent 4 hours this week working on this blog post. Is there an ROI on this? And so learning how to track what is building your business and what isn't building your business, and which one of those things is the most efficient use of your time, that's when it becomes quite valuable. That's the reason a lot of these very A-list people that we know in our industry, they don't sit down and write the blog post. They have someone that they've outsourced the preliminary draft to.
Yep.
That person goes and does all the research, they double check all the links, they write the copy, they do the whole thing. Then they hand it to the person, that A-list person, and they finish it off in their voice. And that's a very efficient use of their time. And those ghostwriters that go out and do that work for somebody else, they're very good at what they do. They're not going to spend 4 hours writing a blog post. They're actually very good at what they do and can do that in easily a third of that time.
I have someone on LinkedIn who made the comment, and they said, time waits for no one.
Yes.
And that is so true. So we're talking about this. Do you control your time, developing your time partnership? That's also something, is that time waits for no one. So you sign on a client, the client says, this is what they need done. You think you have time freedom. So you're like, hey, I'm going to wake up at 10 o'clock. I'm going to brush my teeth at 11. I'm going, like, you're going through the day, but guess what? Time waits for no one. Someone has paid you for a service. They want that service done at a particular time. They're not going to wait. So time doesn't wait for someone. So it's really important to develop that really good time partnership, or that relationship with time, and know how to manage your time really well when you work from home. And I find it's more of a struggle when you work from home. The reason why is because suddenly it's kind of like you have no structure, even though you may have worked a 9 to 5 before. So you understand, I have to wake up, I have to travel, I have to get to the office, I turn on my computer, I start working. When you work from home, it's suddenly a new beast. It's like, oh my goodness, look at all these new toys I can play with. I can do the laundry in the middle of the day. Right?
Yeah, and that's just real talk. I mean, that is the whole thing about this particular series, is real talk and what it is. And again, I have always pretty much worked for myself, and a lot of that was done from my home. And you go through these times where, and this is, other people have told me this too, so this just isn't me saying this. And that is, there are times where you think, and I have all the time in the world. And you think, I have all the time in the world. I can just do this thing sometime this week. I am going for a walk. I'm going to my restaurant. I'm going to the gym. I'm going to the thing. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. And what happens is when you have that kind of relationship with time, it's sort of like a very disconnected fantasy world. Somehow time is going to just kind of magically produce more of itself so that you can do this thing that you said, I'll do it later, I'll do it later, I'll do it later. And somehow that time magically manifests. And then on Friday, you're like, oh, crap. You're like, I didn't know it was going to take me 4 hours to write this blog post. Oh my gosh, I had no idea it was going to take me 3 hours longer to get things approved, to get to the thing. And so if you have anything that you do, if you're considering working from home and you haven't jumped into that, is learn how to be in this partnership with time before you actually need it, because you'll hit the ground running instead of like going through all the trouble that we've gone through to figure out our time management. And I'll say straight up, I built my time management program because I was having problems with time and because I had so much to do. And I'll tell you, I got all the old stories. All right, so I'm old enough I can tell all the old stories. So here's the deal. When I got my second book deal, I was sitting in a hotel room in Las Vegas at a convention. They called me up and they said, hey, want to write another book? And I was like, yes. And they said, we'll pay you 3 times as much. And I'm like, yes. And they said, and you have 30 days to write a 300-page book. And I was like, oh, shit. How is that even possible?
Yeah, it takes you 4 hours to write a blog post and you had to write 300 words.
So here's the thing with a traditional publisher, especially with Wiley, the Dummies series, you don't just write it and send it to somebody. You have to do the formatting. There's a style guide you would not believe. Every bullet point has to start with an action verb. I mean, it's like nuts, right? And it took us, and this was me and Amy and Andrew, we all had the same thing. It would take an hour to write a page for a Dummies book. Wow. Because you would write the thing, you'd have to research and make sure it was still true. And then you'd have to come back, then you'd have to look at this style guide and try to figure out how to put all the things together. Then you had to put in a whole nother layer of their voicing, which if you remember, Dummies books has this sort of like comedic kind of light feel to it. You had to put all of that in. So it took me an hour to write a page. So 300 pages in 30 days is 10 pages a day, which is 10 hours of writing a day.
And that's exactly what I was going to say, because I've used my lovely handy dandy calculator and I looked 300, that would be 300 hours. You divide those 300 hours by 8 hours a day, right? And if you did that, that would be 37 and a half days. But you said you had to get it done in 30 days.
Yeah, so they had a hard deadline on this thing. So I was like, I have no idea. So I came home and I was like, oh, how do I do this, right? So I had to on my calendar, I was like, the only way to do this is to find a space for things. And that's where I got started with working in my calendar, and that was 2011. And so I figured out a system for myself. It was the hardest month of my life because I had clients, I had other responsibilities, I had all the things, right? And so I got it done. And just so you know, they took that manuscript and put it somewhere for 3 months.
So technically you had 4 months to write that.
I did. And I was like, can I have that thing back? Can I have that thing back? I would like to work on that thing a few more minutes, And they were like, no, we're going to wait till we do the da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, in 4 months in social media, things change. Yep. And I was like, I need that. So anyway, that's a whole nother story.
But the thing is, that's a great example of how do we really own the time? So technically, you didn't really own that time, because even when you submitted it in the time that they asked, there was these 4 months that was maybe part of their own process that wasn't calculated into your time.
Yeah, that's where time partnership makes more sense, because 10 hours of my day was in partnership with a work for hire for a nice sum of money, by the way. I didn't mind the nice sum of money. And I was willing to be in partnership that way for a month to get it done. Now, it was not the way I would prefer it. It's not the way I would prefer to be in partnership with time. But it was a thing that happened, and that's the way it was. But the only way I was able to get it done was to go to my calendar, and I'm like, okay, I can do 4 hours here. Then I got to do 2 hours of this, and then I have 3 hours of this, and I have to get back to writing for another 4 hours here. And then after 8 o'clock, I have another 2 hours. So I had to figure out where that writing was going to happen. And that was every day. There was no weekends off on that thing. And it was one heck of a month. But that's where my time management program came in. I learned so much about how to move things around on a calendar, how to get things done, how to be accountable to my calendar. I could look at my calendar and quite off the bat, it was just like, never have another month like this. Mm-hmm. Do whatever it takes to not have a month like this. And I learned all the ways to use the calendar. And so after that whole thing was done, I had this kind of system. And so I took the system and I started training some of the people inside of Social Media Manager School at the very beginning. And then they said, well, that's great, but we want to really deep dive into that. And then that's where I created Time Bliss, because that was everything that I had learned about working with Google Calendars in particular. And so that's why that whole thing got developed. It's because of that crazy contract that I had.
And I want them, even though like I know this program specifically is about Google Calendar, it technically is really any calendar,
yes.
You know, and I even incorporated some of the things that you've talked about into even my scheduling system that I use. So I use Acuity for my scheduling. So whenever I have to book a consultation or I have a client call that needs to be done, I'll send them a link. And that client link, they don't realize this, but I have a 15 block before it and a 15 minute block after it. And the reason why is, and you and I know this because today's going to be one of your hectic days, is meetings back to back. Guess what? Sometimes meetings go over. Or sometimes you just need to run to the ladies' room.
Yes.
Or sometimes you just need to clear your mind before the next meeting. And that's also not just meetings, but with tasks. So let's say I am writing a blog post, right? So I actually have a blogger on my team. So what she does is she'll send it to me in a Google Doc. She'll like, hey, Daphne, here's the Google link. I'll go in, but I need to then go into there and I need to review the blog post. I need to go and search for images that are going to go to it. I need to go and see what backlinks that I would have for either myself or my client based on who they're writing the blog post for. Is there any curated content that it can link to? So there's other tasks that still need to be done. And I have to block that off on my calendar. And so I also, I know you teach this in Time Bliss, so I'm not going to go too far in. I color code. So, I have my to-do list because I love notebooks. I have my to-do list. From my to-do list, I move everything into my calendar.
Yes, and it's interesting that we're sort of kind of a little bit focusing in on blogging, because I'm checking this right now because one of my highest viewed videos on YouTube is not loading. Come on, pretty please. Is, hang on a second. There we go. Apply. Just make it happen. It's trying to load it. On YouTube is how to use Google Calendar with blogging, and that's exactly what I talk about in there. Is think about all the aspects that you have to do with creating a blog post. Now, some people prefer to just say, okay, all day long, blog post. I'm doing all the things. I'm going to do all the keyword research. I'm going to do all the image creation. I'm going to write the post. I'm going to make all the things in one day. Some people, that's the way their mind works. Other people, like you, outsource bunches of things, and you have to come back in. So there might be a little thing of meeting with writer. Then you have another meeting with graphic designer. Another little section that says review draft, and then you have another little section is double check the images. All the little bits and pieces have a separate place on your calendar, and then and that takes all week. And on Friday you have it scheduled to go out, and there's a final review, and that's on your calendar also, and then it goes out. Now that's the way a lot of people work too. So the way that's the kind of like the whole kind of like sub theme of this whole thing about time management is you have to know how you work, and then partner with time to make it efficient in your schedule? And I think that's the biggest question. And of course, YouTube's still not loading for me, so okay, whatever.
What I wanted to also mention is that partnering with time and working from home, it's important because when you made the decision to work from home, be it for a 9 to 5 or to have your own business, there is part of you that wanted to have a little bit more control of your time. So partnering with time does not mean that you go to the bathroom with your computer to work. And I want to be very honest because I don't like the hustle mentality that sometimes we kind of push over. But I think it's important to know that partnering with time also means that I have to block time for my family. Like I actually have a family calendar and I block that time off. And those things don't move. This is my family calendar. These are the things that I have to do with my family because my family is priority number one for me.
Yes.
I want to stop a quick second. Stephanie, thank you so much for watching. I totally understand about parent duties as I just was talking about parents. And yes, the replays will be available you're watching on YouTube, so the replay will be available on YouTube. Thank you so much, Stephanie. But I think it's important for people to understand that owning your time, you also have to own and partner your time for your personal affairs as well. Not just, I always have to be on, because you don't always have to be on when you're a social media manager. I think that is a perception that I would love to kind of work on. And too bad we didn't talk about that this week, but I think it's something that we should definitely work on. Oh, tomorrow's challenges is on for tomorrow.
Yes. Well, so here's the thing, just a couple of thoughts about that. It isn't that, okay, a lot of people, when they decide they're going to work at home, and this is real talk, they either think, I just need to transfer how I work at work into my home, or they're thinking, I'm going to do just the opposite of what I did at work, right? So again, there will be a time where you kind of sort through those things, but you do have some flexibility in terms of where you put things and how you put things and how it fits into your life. I'm thinking of somebody right off the bat who has very young children, and she is basically with them all day, but then they go to bed at 7, which is like, bless her. They go to 7, and then she starts working, and she might work till 2 o'clock in the morning. And it's solid work during that time. There's nothing to distract her. There's nothing that she needs to do. There's no laundry or cooking or anything or transporting the kids. All that is done someplace else. So she has worked it out for her the way that she works. I know lots of guys who do this too, who have a very strong side hustle, and when they come home, they are with their family, they're with their kids, and they're solid with that. The kids go to bed, they go do a podcast. You know, Pat Flynn talks about that too, and how he built his podcast empire, doing that because he's all day with the family and the kids, and then after they're taken care of, then he does his thing. So there are lots of freedoms in terms of what type of business you decide to do. I mean, for example, Pat does coaching and consulting, which has to happen at a reasonable time for the people he's doing the consulting with. But if you have to be on call for community management, for social media marketing, a lot of times you need to either work out a quick mobile way to check things in the car when you're picking up the kids, or you need to have worked out your contract with your clients that you're only checking community service things when you're not with family. It's really important. And we talked about this one other day too, where we said, you know, if you're sitting on the sofa with your husband watching Netflix, you should not be scrolling through Instagram. Really and truly, you will find neither one of those things become interesting if you do that. So one or the other, and organize your life. All right.
So one of the things that I wanted to talk about, so we talked about time. Do you really control it? And I think that what you have to do is you have to have this partnership with time, and you have to learn to create a flexible environment.
Yes.
It is important for you to put all of those things into your calendar. So if you are working from home because, let's say, you chose to be a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home dad, you want to block those times off immediately. Let's say you pick up your child every day after school. So you need to block off from 2:30 to 3 o'clock, because you know that's when they come home. Or maybe you need to block off 2:30 to 3:30, because not only do they come home, but if they're like my kids, they need to have a snack as soon as they came home, because somewhere along the line, there was no food at school. Right. So they come home, they need to eat whatever, and you set them up. You have a nice family conversation with them, and then you can go back to work. You can also, and this is some of the things that I do, is I create a flexible environment by I have specific days of the month where I take evening calls.
Yes.
So, and my family even knows it. So I actually have a family conversation about, hey, they know I work from home. And I'm like, here are the days that either I'm going to be doing a live stream, so you can't interrupt mommy in her office. Here are the days that I'm actually taking client calls, because I might have a client call. And those help quite a bit. And then I also have some days, and I am not a morning person, but I actually have some days on my calendar during the month where I have time for early appointments, because I have people in different time zones. So there are going to be times, and they'll laugh at me because they know Daphne is not a morning person. And I'm very honest with my clients when it comes to that.
I'm glad you mentioned time zones. I have a client right now that has to have everything posted at what is my time, 7 a.m. in the morning. But I'm done work at way before 8 o'clock in the morning. I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
And if that was my only client, I'm like done.
Yep.
And I have all the freedom in the world to do whatever I want to do. Now, if I wanted to, I could bring on new clients and have that happen. But when I realized that he wanted all of these things posted at a particular time in the morning, so it hit a different time zone at a particular time,
Mm-hmm.
and I realized it was 7 a.m., I thought, well, I got to get out of bed before 7. And I was like, yeah, but I'm done.
Yep.
I'm done.
Yeah.
And if I get, the faster I get, the more money I make within that hour for the work. And it's just what and I have no distractions. Nobody else is bothering me during that time. The phone's not going to ring. Nothing's, hardly anybody else is doing any business at that time. It's just smooth sailing. And it's such a gift, really, to have that. So when you're taking on clients, think about, is there a way to organize the things that you have to do for them at a time where you'll be undistracted and you won't have to worry about taking care of somebody at that time, and totally focus and get it done, and then you're done. And then you do have more time freedom, and you have worked in partnership with time that way to be the most efficient use of it. So kind of cool. Does anybody have any questions? I know I get so involved in having this thing, I keep forgetting to look over there. If you have questions, and I see some of the live comments, not all of them. I'm seeing the ones that are showing up on StreamYard from all the places. I see it coming in from Facebook, and I see it coming in from YouTube, which is awesome, you guys, that you're seeing it over on YouTube. So if you have questions about what to do with a client or how to organize your time, or if you personally are having a really hard time with time, tell us and we can help you sort through it. Also, if you are interested in being in this time partnership and working at home, I just want you to know that we've got your back. We are totally there for you. We are happy to answer questions about it. We think that being a social media manager is an awesome use of your time and gives you the most flexibility and ability to design a business that you love. And so we really, of course, I love the school because I'm the co-founder of it, and I just love everything that we've put in there and the community we've built. And I know Daphne does too, and I know that she really wants to promote this and get people into the school who want to make a change in their lives, want to have something new and different, and where you can be in partnership with Time and hopefully make it easier for you and more enjoyable for you.
So I got an inbox message yesterday from one of our live streams, and the person is considering being a social media manager. Now, it's funny, and I love this part because, I'm a tools junkie. People tend to ask about tools where how do you manage it all? How do you manage your time? How do you manage the clients? How do you manage client expectations? So part of today is also, we are talking about time, but what tools do you have within your own business that help you with time? So one, we talked about something called time bliss. So I said I was going to say time blitz. I don't know why. So time bliss. And that's actually a program that teaches you how to use particular tools, right? To manage your time and have a great partnership with time. And for me, when it comes to my business, the things that you learn in Time Bliss are so valuable, but I'm going to give you some hints as far as tools because I'm the tools junkie part of this relationship here. And for me, I use the Google Suite. I am a Google junkie. People can say that about me. I'm okay. I do have some of my clients who are like, "What do you mean you don't have an iPhone?" No, I don't have an iPhone. But I live by my Google Calendar. I absolutely love my Google Calendar and I put everything into it. The other thing is project management. I think that is something that is really important for people. Yes, I use my notebook and I transfer things into my Google Calendar, but you have Google Docs, and some things that people don't know with Google Docs is you can actually chat with people that you are sharing the Google Doc with, and you can manage all of that information right there. Google saves it, especially if you're using the Google Suite. And then there is this one thing, I don't know if you ever tried it, Phyllis. I know I had talked to you a little bit about it, which is ClickUp. And ClickUp is one of those kind of, it's funny, when it first came out, it was considered the Asana killer. I wasn't really an Asana person, but I always find it really interesting when new tools come out that they're the killer of some other tool.
Yes.
And I don't believe that. I believe that we have to find something that works really well for our brains. So when we talked a lot about the calendar system, you have to figure out how does that calendar system work with your brain. And for me, it's my to-do list. And then it goes into the calendar. Even for my family stuff, my kids know I have created a family calendar, given them access to everything. Mm-hmm. And so 15 and up, you have something in there. It needs to go into the calendar, and they will put it into the calendar because I get notifications about it. Yes. And for me, that's also helpful because I love to know when something is due for a client, and I have a reminder in my Google Calendar that goes in there. So for me, those tend to be some of the tools that I use for my business and that help. And then of course there are like proposal processes. So you could use something like Dubsado for your proposals, and it kind of walks you through the process. You submitted a proposal, you submitted a contract, you had an invoice, and then it sets everything up for you. So it's almost automated, and it takes away that parts of those tasks. I don't want to say it takes away all of those tasks because that's something that's very important. Automation is good, but it's not the only thing that you should be doing in your business.
Yes. So inside the school, we have this thing called 9 tools all social media managers need. And it basically, I'm gonna do something fun. You want to do something fun?
Yes, let's do it.
I'm gonna yell out the type of tool. So I'll be 9 of these, and you're going to tell me the tool that you use for this thing. And yes, I know, such pressure.
The pressure.
But the thing about it is that some of these overlap. So yep. I might say some of them, and you'll say, "Oh, I use that too for that." All right. Okay. So the first one's really easy. Time management.
Calendar, Google Calendar. Come on.
Project management.
ClickUp.
Social scheduling.
Oh, eClincher.
Management and reports.
eClincher.
Image and video creation. There might be 2 tools.
Oh yeah, I do more than one. So I use Canva, and we use Premiere, Adobe. So we use a whole bunch for the video stuff, but that's because it's video.
Right. File management.
Google Drive.
CRM.
Oh, Dubsado.
And email system.
ConvertKit.
Online meeting system.
Acuity.
Money management.
Wave.
And extra like tech, like what do you like this right now? You're using
So I'm using StreamYard. Love StreamYard.
Yeah.
Shout out to
So
StreamYard.
see, that wasn't hard, right? That was just really quick. So and that's done. Now once you know, these are the 9 tools that every social media manager needs. Once you have a tool for that thing, it's really important not to be, persuaded to go find something else, because it's very attractive out there. People have amazing copywriting skills and they want you to go to a different tool. So a lot of times social media managers, especially because they're curious and because they're creative, they like to look at all the different tools. And what happens is they end up with 20 things for image creation and they don't use them.
Yep.
And they're paying for them. And so what happens is that they're not in touch with their financial overhead, because it's $2 here, $10 a month here, $15 a month there, and all of that adds up and it's not necessary. You need one good tool for image creation and one good tool for video creation, and maybe an extra one for fun, because that's the fun part of that particular thing. But if you already have an email system, you don't have to that's working for you. Yep. You don't have to go hunting for other email systems. You can stay focused on what you need to do. So this is a good exercise for a lot of social media managers to see what tool they're missing. And because a lot of times that's where they're spending a lot of their physical time, their real time doing manual things, where they could have a tool to do it. For example, the invoicing and all of that, where if you have them set up inside of Dubsado, it makes it so much easier than having to, do I use this template? And how did I do it last time? And where am I sending the money? And, all that stuff. You have to figure out your system and have it done. So it's a way to organize your thoughts around all the tools and not be a tool collector.
And I think what's also important is that you want to make sure that your tools speak to one another, because that is kind of, oh my goodness, I know. They speak to one another. So like, for example, when Phyllis was asking me some of these things, it might seem like I have a lot of them, but guess what? I'm only kind of using them in one platform, which is my website. So my website is on one particular CMS, and that CMS works with Acuity. And that CMS also works with ConvertKit. So pretty much I'm doing everything in my CMS, right? Dubsado works with my CMS. So again, I'm only going into my CMS, right? So you want to make sure those things, your payment processor, you want to make sure that it goes into that. Now, when it comes to tools, I know that I'm a tool junkie. I get it. But then again, a lot of people come to me because I train them on how to use those tools. So that is a specific skill set that I have, where I train people how to use the tool.
And then it's appropriate. Because you need to know how things work. You're more of a researcher but if you're not a researcher and training other people how to use other tools, you just need to find that one thing that works for you and just stick with it.
And that's what I was going to say. But even though I'm a researcher, I'm not going to switch those systems within my business. And I'm not going to, because there is a learning curve. Then there is a tech curve, because once you implement something into your business, we're talking about time. You've now lost a ton of time, because now you had to relearn a system. You had to reintegrate it into your system. And if you have a team of people, now you need to train them and then fix all of the mistakes. Because guess what? When we go into something new, it's bound to have issues. That's just life. It's just bound to have issues. So it's important to understand where you're spending your time.
Yeah, take it from somebody who changed all her systems this year. And that idea of playing well together, you would think everything would just play well with each other, and they just don't. It's in this day and age, you would think that all the systems would play well with each other, but they don't. And so do your research before you make any hard decisions about changing tools, because otherwise you will be sitting there and your pay button does not work with your automated email membership program. And then all of a sudden someone becomes a member, but there's no communication with the membership program. So been there, done that. Don't want to do that again.
So someone asked a good question. They said a friend turned her on to Wavebox to manage all of her apps or his apps. I don't know if it's a male or female. And have either of you used it? I have not, actually, amazingly so. There's a tool that I have not used.
Oh,
No,
no.
I have not used Wavebox. But what I do use at times, and this is something that is really good, it sounds like something Wavebox does, is I use something called Station. And Station is a way that you open up Station and you don't have to open up the internet. So I have to be honest, real talk, I sometimes have too many apps, too many tabs open, sometimes. And when I need to stay really focused on the work that I'm doing without going into the internet and opening up another tab, I use something called Station. And Station what it does is it connects to all of my apps. So there's a sidebar that will have my Gmail open, my Task open, my Dubsado open, my Wave open, all of those. And I just have to click on them when I need to use them. So that's something that I found very helpful for me.
Yeah, it's basically the same thing as far as I can tell from the outside too, where it's almost like a work dashboard and you have all your apps on the side and you can flip to them, and it's just, you have to think about how your brain works.
Mm-hmm.
How does your brain work? Does it work with a left column or does it work with a tab system? So, whatever works for you, and try that out. And both of those look well. I have not tested them in my own life. So sorry, can't help you. But they look wonderful. They look like they would be a very efficient use of time, as long as you don't have 50 tabs on that left column or 50 tabs up on your browser. You're good to go.
Yeah, the browser thing can be a big thing, especially with time.
Yeah. And we talked about that. And for those of you who missed that conversation, count how many tabs you have open right now on your computer. If it's more than 5, you are delegating part of your brain to remember what those tabs are. And that part of your brain can now not focus on what it is you're doing right now. So after about 5, what happens is you will feel overwhelmed. And the reason you're feeling overwhelmed is because part of your brain can't focus on what to do with the hand. It's holding the memory of the tab. So if you start closing up and learning to finish a thing, close the tab, that's the new habit you have to do. If you close it, you can always put it back up. Just close the tab, have it under 5. You will feel a lot lighter in how you feel when you're doing your work. I guarantee it.
And I was going to say, there's another tool that I use. It's called Toby, Toby. And I started using it because of tabs. And so there are times that I might find something while I am researching, and I'm like, you know what? It's making me go down the rabbit hole. So what I do is I save it in Toby, and Toby closes that tab out for me. So it keeps a history of my tabs, and I can file those tabs in any way. So that's a great tool that I use when I am writing a blog post or I'm doing some kind of research. So I might, or even when I take on a new client. So if I take on a new client, let's say I am taking on an attorney who does medical malpractice, right? So what I want to do is I want to start researching and curating content ahead of time so that I can have a really good conversation with them. So as I am finding different things in articles that I like, I just save it into Toby. And when I have a conversation with them, I can open up those tabs right away without going to different things. And that's actually something that I found very helpful for me. And it keeps my tabs down, not as all the time, but most of the time.
No, that's a good system, and I'll share how to do that manually using Google Calendar. Is when you find a URL that you want to save, you copy and you put it in your calendar, and it's right there, and you always have access to it. Or you have a tab for the client and you put it in the description. Now that Google Calendar has changed it so you can actually have hyperlinks in the description, it makes it so much easier. But that way you can just capture everything and have a bucket for all the things that you're researching and have them all in the same place at the same time. So there, again, how does your brain work? Where do you, what tool do you use that fits with your brain? Again, from the very beginning of this conversation, it was about that integration with how you work and how the tool works and how time works in real life, and being able to work with all of those things in a realistic, feet on the ground sort of way, so that you're not frustrated. And if you're feeling frustrated with time, or you're feeling frustrated with the amount of time you feel like you don't have, then there are things you can do right now to change that. And one of the things is you have to start getting very realistic about how long things take to do, and start putting them on your calendar in those time blocks, so that you start getting a real clear, realistic understanding of how time works, and how it's not this unlimited fantasy thing that you can create time out of nowhere. That time does have a physical component to it, and you need to learn to work in partnership with that to be efficient and productive.
I was listening to you, please.
I
was
know you were.
Unfortunately, LinkedIn does not provide the API yet, so we can't see the comments from LinkedIn. So I'm constantly going on my phone responding to LinkedIn people. So I don't want you guys to think I was being rude.
So how are the LinkedIn people doing?
So LinkedIn is doing well. Someone was just asking me about what is the name of the CMS that I use, and I was letting them know that I use Squarespace for my website, and then I use Dubsado as my CRM. And Squarespace owns Acuity, which is why I use Acuity for my scheduling, because it works seamlessly. So there's lots of things in there.
Yes, smart integration on their part.
Yeah.
Actually.
And then Google the other day, well, not the other day, but I was playing around. They even have a to-do list on there.
Yes, Google does have a to-do list, and like I said, it's a good first step. You can do it. And inside of the to-do list, if you actually put a date and time, it will put it on the calendar for you.
Yes.
The problem with that is it doesn't let you put, like how
The
long it.
description?
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff. It's not really a good transfer system yet. They didn't talk to me. They should have asked me. But you can do the to-do list, and then once you've put it on a time block in your calendar, you can click it off, the checkbox that you've done it. That just means it's on your calendar. And that way, if people are used to making that to-do list, it's a good first step, and then just learn to move it into a space.
I'm going to say something before we get off, because I realize that we're almost up to the hour.
Yes, look at that.
I believe that we started this 4-part series talking about the business journey. I also believe that time management when you're working from home is a journey. It is not, because the first time you work from home, you get so, yes, I get to work from home. I don't have to do this. I don't have to do that. But there's also this other thing that, yes, I get to work from home. And so you don't want to lose that. So you work. It is a journey, because you have to learn what works for you. You have to figure out what time management system works for you. I will continually repeat, there has to be a balance between your time, what Phyllis said about your financial freedom, and about your life freedom. There is a reason you chose to work from home. And so you just have to figure out what system works for you, what works well for you. There's a lot of different things that we talked about today. We talked about Time Bliss. We talked about our Google calendars. We talked about using a project management system. There's a whole ton of things out there. But we also talked a lot about how when you choose to build a business, when you choose to build a business, potentially one that is being a social media manager, you want to figure out how you can manage your time really well and also provide your customers with the best service.
Yes.
So I think I just want to reiterate to everyone that you can inbox myself, you can inbox Phyllis, you could put messages on all of the videos. One of us will definitely get back to you. We're very open to answering questions. Phyllis says it all the time that I've been doing this for a while. Sometimes I don't realize how much time I've been putting into this, but I've been doing this for a while. And I've had the ups, the downs, the oops, the finally aha moments where I get it and I understand. And I'm still a work in progress, because I think everyone is a work in progress. I'm always learning what is working best for me, as well as my team is growing. I end up having to shift things with my time as well when I have a new person on my team, because even just training itself, you need to make sure that you're jotting that down.
Yes. And I have to say, the journey with time has been a big one for me. And a lot of people say, "Oh, Phyllis, you're always so relaxed." And that was a process of learning to be in partnership with time. Because now all the things that happen that have to be done and I'm obligated to do, if it's on the calendar and there it has a home on the calendar where I have a dedicated time to do it, I can relax.
Yep.
I can like chill because I know it's going to get done. But that transition from being anxious about all the things that were in my head that had to be done, when I first started putting it on the calendar, I would still feel that anxiousness. Oh, I still need to do it. But then I realized it's on the calendar, people. I can relax now. I can go to the movie at 4 in the afternoon because I can, because I am responsible to my work and have found a place for it where I will be the best to do that thing.
Yep.
And that's 7 a.m. in the morning or 11 o'clock at night, whatever that works for you, as long as it's on that calendar, you can relax and enjoy your life. Because, hello, real talk here, enjoy your life. Really, truly. Figure out a way to make it work for you. And like Daphne said, we're here for you. Absolutely, we're here for you.
And last but not least, I want you guys to not judge yourself for how you use your time.
No.
So what works for you may not work for someone else.
Yes.
And because you choose to work from home, you have the ability to figure out what works for you. There are times, and I know I've had this conversation with Phyllis because I was there, I was messaging her. I was at gymnastics. I drove my daughter to gymnastics, had a lovely conversation with her about her school day, took her to gymnastics. She does like the first 15 minutes of gymnastics is pretty much routine. And so then I had my laptop, I did some work that I needed to do. And then her final 15 minutes I watched. And there are some of the moms that look at me like, oh, I don't believe she's doing that. And I'm cool with that because I know how much time I put into my family and how much I give. So don't let other people judge you on how you utilize your time. Just make sure that you are doing what you said you were going to do. I think that's probably more important than anything else. So yes, I joked and said, don't bring your laptop into the bathroom, but might be your work zone, I'm hoping it's not, but it might be your work zone.
Everybody gets to do
you got to do you.
Hey, what are we doing tomorrow real quick before we...
Tomorrow is challenges and PJs. It is my favorite day because we get to talk about all of the different challenges or real talk challenges of working from home and also working as a social media manager, because it's not all, what do they say? Bells, whistles, what is it? Glitter and sunshine. Wait, what is it? Unicorns and glitter, who knows, whatever. But it is not always the most amazing thing. And I want to be honest with you guys. So there are definitely challenges. And we get to talk about PJs because you're working from home. So are Phyllis and I wearing PJs and just have pretty tops on? We won't tell you till tomorrow.
That's right. That's exactly right. All right.
Thank you guys
fun.
so much.
Thank you. And bye to everybody. And we'll see you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.